My unique experience is I was born with an intersex expression. So intersex is when a child in the womb, a baby in the womb, is developing with multiple characteristics of female and males. I do believe some gender roles and some gender expressions are inherently natural because of testosterone and estrogen. And that's the part that I think is super important. It's not about identity for me. There's a literal hormonal biology that completely transforms your body during puberty. And I had both. I think you're spot on. I think gender roles, or especially masculine, feminine, what the one you're working with more, absolutely can have an impact on your hormones and your biology.
Yeah, but now the question is what is right?
Oh, hello there.
Hello and welcome to Insanity.
Thank you. Nice to be in insanity with you.
I'm so grateful that you are my guest. I created Insanity as a podcast and community for people who dare to do something differently, who dare to question things and to go deep into their own truth. Because I figured that the real insanity is to do the opposite. And this is what the average person does. And this is what we all do from time to time, because this is like our baseline in society, is to just follow the footsteps of other people and the advice of people who preach to do something that fits into the normal box. So I thought, okay, if this is sanity, let's go in the insane direction. That's why I created the podcast and community. I want to build something bigger. So I'm so excited to have you on board, because I think that you are so inspiring and you question things in a way that teach me so much. Like, I learn a lot from your content. I'm super inspired and I would love to know more about you, more about your path. Recently, I saw one of your videos where you talked about people who criticized you, who said that you're transphobic. That's very confusing, and I don't think that you are that. So this is also something that I would love to explore today. But first of all, I would love to learn more about your journey, how you became a coach, and what your top motivators are for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. This is the most exciting podcast I think I've ever been on so far.
Really?
Like your outfit is amazing, this background is amazing, the
Thank
things
you.
you're saying are so it's exciting and fun. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
yeah, really happy to be here. I'm happy, and when I say I'm happy to be here, what I actually mean is I can't wait to see where this goes. You know, these conversations are so mysterious. I never know what's
Right.
going to come up, and I'm just excited to dive in. Um, I mean, like a lot of us, I started my career from my pain. So I was really, really sick. I was really ill, chronically ill, had a lot of chronic disease. And I was very lucky to discover a health food store in my little town. I was actually going to college to major in psychology. And I went over to this health food store to get a job to pay some bills and just to work. And it was there that I started discovering herbs and foods and supplements and this whole other way of living that was completely counterculture what I grew up with. I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is this really little town called Lebanon, and it's a place that's been frozen in a certain past. It hasn't really
I see.
moved anywhere. So it was really unusual for anyone to even think they could eat to heal something. So I went into eating differently, living a little differently, and my entire body started transforming. Everything started transforming. My hair even went curly. It was straight. And so I had this whole like massive transformation of my body and my
Wow.
mind. And that led me to the path I'm on now in many different ways.
I've heard that a few times, that people started with pain, that this was their initial trigger to seek truth, actually.
Mhm.
And what I find so interesting about your content, I don't think I know any other creator who sees life so holistically and who approaches their content so holistically. So you don't just talk about self-development when it comes to like mental health or spirituality. You also talk about physical health and nutrition. So, what would you say are your top three motivators to approach your content so holistically?
I think doing the work so much in myself and with other people over the years, really seeing how this mind and this body, this spirit and this physical shell, they have a lot of mirroring. And so I can't be thinking something without that also affecting my body. I
Yeah.
can't be eating something without that affecting my mind. So I would say my own experience of kind of having a multidimensional healing I would say, experience of having these different things in my life that changed the whole of my life, where it wasn't just one piece, but it was many pieces, and helping other people and seeing how someone would eat differently and it would change their sleep, and their sleep would change how they perceive the world around them, and their perception of the world around them would change their relationships. And nature. Nature's the third for me. I watch nature be so vital and so alive because of a lot of conflicting things happening at once. There's not just one thing that makes nature vibrant. It's a million things going wrong and going right that creates this incredible fertility.
Yeah, you said one very interesting thing in one of your posts too. You said that we use our nutrition to feed our emotional needs rather than our nutritional needs. And
Hmm.
I'm wondering why this is, because it could be so easy and so logical to just take the right food for our bodies, but we kind of don't. And we think
Hmm.
that food will, yeah, it will serve our emotional needs, like the good old cheat day or the feel good food. But does it really work like that? Because it seems like our cheating day and our feel good food does the opposite, and we
Hmm.
actually fall somewhere we don't want to fall into probably afterwards.
Yeah, that's what's amazing to me about it. And I had 15 years of, clinical experience in my private practice with nutrition, and thousands of clients at this point, and my own dozens of weird experiences I've been through with food. And it fascinates me to see there's so many levels here. So one layer or level is what I call the inner pharmacy. So it's this, pharmaceutical response that the body puts out. These
Mhm.
hormones and neurotransmitters the body puts out. These endogenous opioids the body puts out. So it's this incredible experience of when I eat a certain food, it beckons a certain response from my microbiome or from my brain chemistry or from my fat cells, even.
Mhm.
And my body has a whole biochemical response from that food, which changes how I feel temporarily. So there's this state change that happens. It shifts my entire physiology and my perception while the food is alive in me. And then when it's digested or metabolized, I go right back to where I was, even more so than, let's say, if I was depressed and I ate from that place. Once it wears off, once it metabolizes, I have even more depression because the food itself creates a stress response. So there's this desire to temporarily soothe a state because of the way food biochemically affects us. But then there's also this very deep instinct of when I'm going to eat a potato chip, this old ancient animal body knows that a whole potato actually has a lot of good minerals for my nervous system. And butter or avocado or olive oil, like high quality fat, has such incredible glucose balancing effects and nervous system and adrenal balancing effects. So there's this instinct of I want fat and I want a potato,
Yeah.
but the modern world, I go for the potato chip. So the instinct is correct, but the processed food actually does more harm.
Wow, that's so interesting because I could swear I had these experiences. I wanted a candy. I wanted something that would be like sourish, like a sour candy. And I would stuff myself with that stuff. And then I thought that was so stupid because what I actually wanted was an orange.
There you go. That is an excellent example. That's an excellent example. And I see that a lot with people who are addicted to like sour worms or sour gummies or
Yeah.
sour candies, and they're really just wanting a sour fruit. They're wanting citrus, and it's right there. It's right there.
Yeah, and I was asking myself these questions for so long because I thought, is my body probably more intelligent than my brain? Because I kind of crave something, so maybe I need this ingredient right now, but I
That's right.
don't know that, and my brain is conditioned to go for the thing that it associates with it, so for the
Hmm.
candy in that case. And one of the biggest hints was in my teenage years when I like to go party and I like to drink some stuff, and then I would be like the next days I would have a hangover, and
Hmm.
I would crave cucumbers all the time. And I thought this is when it hit me too that I thought my body is so smart. It needs something. I don't know what it is. It needs the minerals of this cucumber. And I
Hmm.
usually would feel better when I ate them.
Hmm. It's really that simple. And when people learn how to, I do a 6 month program that's already happening, but every year. And in the program, I have a conversion chart and I teach people this exact thing, these conversions. Like if you're craving this kind of processed food, it can convert to these whole food options. And when people learn how to do that, it's amazing because
Mhm.
they'll be thinking of something like, I want a cheeseburger. And that turns into like chili with beans. It becomes this thing where there's still carbohydrates, there's still protein, there's still fat, but it's a less processed version. So it actually nurtures their body and supports them on a much deeper level.
Yeah, super interesting. Did you or do you know a person who changed their nutrition entirely and you saw their life changing entirely?
Oof. Yes, that's actually what got me into somatic psychology. So I was very happy as a nutritionist. I never thought of doing anything else. I loved it. And then I started noticing, oh, when I reduce someone's intake of chocolate, let's say, they suddenly don't, they have no tolerance for their husband. Like less chocolate means they can't pretend to enjoy the relationship anymore. So this
Interesting.
kind of this kind of light bulb moment happened for me when in 1 week I had these three different clients come in. They did not know each other. All three of them were women, and they were all in marriages they were very unhappy with. And they had these they had like pre-diabetes. And so they needed to reduce sugar initially to kind of get the body back on track. And their main form of sugar, their main substance was chocolate, lots and lots and lots of chocolate. So I said, we have to start reducing your chocolate intake to get your glucose down. And they did. And when they came back the next week, they said, I can't do it. And I said, why? And they said, I will have to leave my husband if I don't eat chocolate. And one out of the three stopped eating chocolate and she actually left her husband and completely transformed her life. The other two kept eating chocolate and they stayed married. So it was, I mean, I've seen hundreds of those examples at this point, but I watch people because what processed food lets us do, it lets us tolerate the intolerable. So these things in our lives that we just can't stand, we're able to deal with them because of how the food impacts us. When that food is removed and the diet has been changed and we enter what I call food sobriety, we can't tolerate the intolerable anymore. So we actually feel how we really feel about things. And that like not that rawness, that creates massive life changes if they stay on the path.
I see so many men right now storming the supermarkets buying chocolate for their unhappy wives.
Bring your wife chocolate when you get home, or she will leave you. That's exactly right.
That's the takeaway.
That's the takeaway here.
No, that's crazy. That's a crazy insight. I had this with alcohol. Like I wasn't
Mhm.
a heavy drinker, never, but I always enjoyed, some cocktails and some wine or something. And there was a period in my life when I've realized that that's so stupid, but I've realized that the more wine I have, the more willing I am to stay in conversations that I don't want to be in.
That's
That
right.
I meet up with people, and I stay in these situations, although I would feel way better at home under my blanket because I'm not a huge party person. And when I was younger, everyone thought I'm a party girl. Everyone thought, oh, Anna, so you like to go out and everything. And I didn't know that I didn't like it because everyone
Hmm.
was partying. So I did the same. And I thought that's kind of okay. And I removed this layer of alcohol. Now I will have a glass of champagne once in a while or of wine, but sometimes, but I don't drink. But what I realized is that my default, my baseline, my truth is that I don't like that stuff.
Hmm.
And that it is, that alcohol helps me being a bit numb to it. So
Hmm.
I numb myself a bit. I'm not actually myself because if I am myself, I'm paying attention to everything. Like I understand super fast that I'm probably bored, that I don't like the situation. Probably I feel a lot of tension in the room. So I probably don't, I react sensitively to people. I feel it's not my place and that's okay. I just don't want to be home or somewhere else or in nature or whatever. That's more my thing. And with the alcohol, the tolerance goes up like
That's
for
right.
things that I wouldn't be able to tolerate if I were sober.
Yeah, you're able to feel how you actually feel.
Yeah.
And I think that what I would see a lot with my clients as I was understanding this finally, were the ones that were unwilling or unable to make a life change, it was very hard for them to stick to the diet. So when they would change their diet, then again, how they felt about their life change, they were actually connected to the authenticity of their response and what they wanted. And
Yeah.
the people that went for that and changed their life, diet was not an issue. And it didn't mean they didn't enjoy food for pleasure. I'm not a strict nutritionist, so I love when people enjoy cake or like cookies or pasta, whatever they want. It's about, are you using it to numb yourself out, or are you using it for pleasure, which is what it's intended for? And when you're using it for pleasure, the baseline, like your diet is based on whole balancing food. So your body's being supported nutritionally. And then in addition to that nutritional support, there's times where you just want the delicious experience of pasta and wine. Go for it. But when you depend on pasta and wine to get through the day, that's the discernment I make. But it really comes down to the ability to change your life. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was this huge realization. What do I choose? Do I choose the story or do I choose myself? And I
Yes.
had this eye-opening moment that I was like, it was my mantra for a while. I was like, I'm choosing myself, I'm choosing myself, I'm choosing myself. And that was the moment when I really stopped doing these things that I knew weren't myself or would change my like feeling, my impression, my the feeling within my body. So I knew I like feeling how I feel within
Yeah.
myself. So why would I
Yes.
give up on
Yes.
that, you know?
And that place that you found is what I call creating safety inside.
Hmm.
It's you found this place inside that feels really rooted, really safe in you. So you're
Yes.
not desperate for these substances outside of you anymore because you have it in already, which is an incredible place to be.
How can we find that easier, this place in ourselves? Because I feel that there are many people who don't know what this place really feels like.
Yeah, they don't. One reason we don't know is because when we're growing up with developmental trauma or a lot of overwhelm or a lot of processed food or, all the above, for a lot of us, there's a dissociation that takes place where the body is unable to perceive how it feels. So it's like numbness, but it's even more kind of ambiguous and confusing. It's more detached. And when you develop in that detached way with your body, you don't even know how you feel about anything. It's really hard to get the subtlety of safety. And safety is really subtle. That's what's interesting about it. Like panic and overwhelm and fear, they're big, uncomfortable, kind of explosive sensations that move through us. But safety is a very quiet, a very still, a very soft one. It's not kind of begging for your attention, it's just hanging out there. So it takes a lot more work to find it. When I work with people, they can find their stress like that. Like they can find tension and overwhelm and pain and anxiety like within a few seconds. It takes them longer to find the safety because it's not a sensation we really develop experiencing through our lives. But my favorite way is for people, and anyone listening can try this. You just look around the environment you're in right now and you visually find one thing that you like. So it could be a plant, it could be a musical instrument, a pet, a tree outside, like one thing you find beautiful or lovely. As you look at that thing, you notice in your body, where do I feel the thing I'm looking at? And you track like your face, your throat, your shoulders, your chest, your belly. Like, where do I feel that?
That's right.
And,
Yeah.
and tell me what yours is. What are you looking at and what do you feel?
Here, I feel I'm looking at a tree right now.
Mhm.
I feel warmth and expansion here, and it is some sort of peace. It is a little spark of joy. It's such a
Hmm.
mix of feelings. Every feeling seems to be a mix of feelings. So this would be mine. Like it's a spark of joy. So I look at something and my reaction is, huh, you know?
Yeah, it's lovely. So even when you say that initial warm and expansive, that's a great descriptor of safety. There's this expansive, soft, opening quality to safety because your body isn't going into protection mode.
Mhm.
Whereas when it's feeling danger or threat or overwhelmed, there's a tension because tension for the body is a bracing. So the body's preparing to brace for something that's about to happen. Whether it's happening or not doesn't matter. The body's kind of expecting it. But when you see that tree and something soften and opens, that's literally a place in your body that's not defending or protecting. So it's a massive resource to settle into, and it's my favorite way to get people into it at first, and then over time they develop spreading that out more.
You also said support the tension and hold the tension. And I thought that's interesting. That helped. That helped me a lot because this is already a softening experience. It's like when we think about tension, what are we usually doing? We are trying to fix the tension. We are trying
Yes.
to dismiss the tension. We are never supporting the tension. And when you said support the tension, I was like, huh,
I
that
have
feels better.
it's probably my favorite practice when it comes to tension is I just say it as laying the tension down. So when I'm working with a group of people, we'll track and we'll find tension and it will be all over the body. And we'll lay it down. We'll lay it down in a chair, in a bed, on a tree, like somewhere. We'll just lay back and let the tension be held. And it's amazing for how many people will start to experience a softening rather than they try to get in and work at it to get rid of it. It's like the tension's allowed to be there. When you support it, it starts to dissolve a bit. But when you try to fix it, you actually get more tense as you go in there to try to figure it out.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. It also relates to what you said about the food. So we eat something to feel better. So we also fix ourselves to feel
Hmm.
better. But by doing that, we will also encourage our body, our brain to produce more of the feeling that we can fix because we get addicted to this process. We get addicted to fixing. We get addicted
Hmm.
to the food. Like it's basically an addiction. We are living like in an addiction mode.
That's exactly what it is. And addiction is the way I define and see it is it's the result of not knowing how to find safety in yourself. So if my body has anxiety and I do not know how to meet that anxiety or be with it, I will instantaneously find something that distracts me from the anxiety, whether it's food or sex or TV or a drug or work, like something that makes me not feel that. Because it's not so much about feeling the safety, that's an important thing. It's also about feeling safe with tension and disrupting sensations. And even somatic psychology, somatic experiencing, which is what I'm trained in, a lot of us will go into that field to help people get out of a dysregulated state. And I actually think it's unuseful. I think it's better for people to feel less scared of their anxiety. And then when the energy comes up, they know how to meet it instead of this instant panic to try to get themselves regulated all the time.
Yeah, also, what does it say about me if the only state that I feel comfortable in is the comfortable state? Means
That's right.
like, so I'm not able to be okay no matter what, or I'm not able to handle any discomfort. That's
Yes.
lame. Like,
Yes.
yeah, it should be possible for us to be okay with discomfort, to be okay with something that just doesn't feel good because, like, that's life somehow.
And I used to be with that too. I used to be that person for such a long time. I was hypochondriacal. So the moment I would feel a sensation that was off, I immediately attached that to death or dying or cancer or some kind of big disease.
Hmm.
And I'd be in absolute terror, for
Wow.
months. I'd be doctor's offices. I'd be calling out of work. I wouldn't be able to leave the house and see friends. I was so panicked by these sensations. And I would say in the last like 7, 8 years, it is completely dissolved, especially now because I'll travel all over the world. And things will happen while you travel. You'll get
Yeah.
sick, or I'll have a headache, or like something will happen that's really unpleasant. And it's amazing how I can still totally enjoy myself, even with this unpleasant sensation in me. Whereas before, it would have completely destroyed my entire week.
Yeah, it is. It's really incredible. Like I'm just asking myself, like I think I'm pretty good with discomfort actually. Like what I'm learning right now is to be more comfortable with comfort.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's right.
That's another construction work.
Well, I have to say, I'm glad you said that because I think a lot of people that are in pain, who think they like comfort, what a lot of us really think, what a lot of us actually like is numbing. So there's pain, there's numbing, and then there's comfort, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us live between pain and numbness because when I work with people and they start to get more embodied, they say what you just say. They're like, this is weird. And I'll say, what? And they say, well, I'm not numbed. And I'm not in pain. It's this other thing. And it's this right, and it's this actual state of contentment, which is brand new to them. So I do think there's something to be said about comfort needing a lot of practice being with.
Yeah, because you will start sabotage it because it's
Mhm.
unfamiliar and probably it will make
Mhm.
your body panic.
Correct, because unfamiliar. That's exactly right. Traumatized bodies love familiarity, even when it's pain. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's predictable, it's like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
Comfort, so unpredictable. Letting down your guard, so vulnerable. And a lot of us, we never lived a life where our guard is down. So it does take a lot of extra work to even embody those states, for sure.
How can we approach that better?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a practice I love called pendulation. And it's something that they talk about in somatic experiencing that the body does. Meaning, if you think of a pendulum swinging, let's say I have all this tension in my shoulder, but my belly feels soft and open, they pendulate between each other and they kind of dissolve and neutralize. Well, there's something called active pendulation, which is what I teach a lot. And it means, okay, I'm feeling comfort in my stomach, but my chest is terrified. It doesn't trust this. I actively pendulate between the two. So I don't have to live in this kind of total global comfort or total global discomfort. It's chest is tight, stomach is soft. Can I live in a body that has both happening at once? And then there's less of a panic when there's tension. And there's less of a grasping when there's softness. You're kind of shifting between the two to let them live in you simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So it's less precious. You're just kind of with it all as it's happening.
Yeah, yeah, I love how you approach things, that you teach people to do things with less pressure, also
Yeah.
befriending this tension, holding it.
Hmm.
That's just so much better than fixing. I wanted to talk about shame with you, which is also a very uncomfortable emotion. And because we just talked about how we can define positive emotions or what positive emotions feel like when we see the pleasant object. I just thought, shame is a very complex emotion. And then probably switch over to your video that you made about how people accused you of transphobia, because you talked about shame in this video. So
Hmm.
in that video, you talked about how you used to be ashamed of your body. And I thought, okay, you have a very intense story and a very like almost unique story. But I think that then I thought about it, like, am I ashamed of my body? Are people in general ashamed of their bodies? And I thought, yeah, I think they probably are.
Yeah, well, I'll start by just speaking about shame through a somatic lens first, and then I'll go into the story
Yeah.
and gender and all that stuff. So, somatically speaking, what's interesting about shame is it's actually a temporary strategy for protection. So, when you have that feeling of shame, you want to be invisible, essentially. Someone who is ashamed is not walking around with their head held up high. Their chin's going in, their shoulders are up, they're not breathing very deeply. They're literally pulling inwards, they're like contracting away from the world. And so if a parent is saying something really brutal or being really abusive, or you're being bullied in school, I had a lot of bullying, then you're going to have a shame response, which is a shutdown. In other words, kind of like a freeze or collapse response when you think of trauma responses. It's meant to temporarily shut you down to keep you from getting more attention so that the potential threat leaves you alone. They kind of no longer interested in you. Compared to someone who like lacks shame and they're very audacious and they're screaming back and they're yelling and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Those who have shame can tend to survive situations because of the shame, which is really interesting. The issue is the shame becomes part of you. So the situation is over, you are home, you're no longer being bullied anymore, or you grew up and your parent is not in your life anymore, but you walk around with the shame. You live with the shame and you shame yourself now in your own mind. So it goes from being this kind of temporary strategy to become invisible for survival to a lifestyle of being invisible for survival. And so you live in that. So I wanted to start there first because it's important to
Yeah.
understand that piece.
Yeah. 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 It makes a lot of sense now that you said it is your shame is why you survived. And
Yes.
that makes so much sense. It's protecting you. So because other people would shame you, you would think something's wrong with you. So you turn it into your lifestyle and you protect yourself by living this lie,
Yes.
actually. So other people can't say anything anymore because you're already down. So they
That's
can't
right.
keep pushing you
That's
anymore.
exactly right, right? Because if I walk in a room and if my shame story is I'm disgusting, nobody likes me, that protects me from even making eye contact, right? So when you're living in that shame state, you're constantly in a state of protection because your body's projecting that someone's going to feel this way about you because that shame identity has taken deep roots. So again, temporarily works. It's doing what it's supposed to do, but we never break out of it. We never learn, oh, I'm not actually ashamed. It was just my body doing this thing to protect me, right? So we internalize the identity and then it becomes a fixed state, which is very difficult. And that's where food comes in too. When you are living with shame, most people have to binge eat a lot or withhold a lot of food to play with that biochemistry because it's very stressful to be in a shame place.
Yeah. And also, I just think what happens to you? Like if you live in shame, what's the next step? So
Yes.
you just become someone who gets beaten up all the time, or who beats up themselves,
Hmm.
and or you keep carrying it on to other people and you will
Hmm.
shame others.
That's right.
Because I
That's
don't
right.
think that if I feel well in my body and if I feel safe and empowered, I'm not going to shame anyone for who they
Correct.
are.
That's
So,
exactly right.
yeah.
That's exactly right. So shame, it persists in this way where literally you do it to others or you do it to yourself or both. But it's this place of growing out of the shame is this incredible, tender, loving process of really loving these parts of yourself that you thought were once disgusting, hideous, unforgivable. It's like falling in love with the most unlovable parts of you. And that's been my whole journey, which I could get into if you want now.
Yes, please.
So my unique experience is I was born with an intersex expression. So intersex is when a child in the womb, a baby in the womb, is developing with multiple characteristics of female and male. So they don't land in one side. And often it can be hormones. Other times it can be chromosomes. So in that case, they don't even know. They can look like a man, they can reproduce everything, but their chromosomes read as female. And other times it can be genitals and chromosomes and hormones. So there's different kind of levels or layers to it. I was born with the hormonal expression. So my genetic code expressed as female for like the first 14, 15 years of life. So my body made tons of estrogen and blocked my testosterone. So I was born with male genitals. So my testes would not able to make enough testosterone. Everything was being converted into estrogen. So I developed a lot like a girl early on. I grew breasts, I grew hips, I was very soft, I felt very feminine, I felt like a girl, I did not feel like a boy at all. Um, it was weird for me because I had a stress and a dysphoria around my penis growing up because I thought I was a girl. And then when I was around 14, 15, I started making enough testosterone. That was kind of like overcoming the estrogen. And then I started developing more like a man, yet I still had the breasts, I still had the hips. And then it was like a dysphoria for having breasts. So it was this interesting thing of I didn't really fit in one category within myself. And I mean, you can imagine how much distress that led to,
Yeah.
because at the time there was, especially in Pennsylvania, like I said earlier, where I lived, no one knew about the term intersex. The doctors didn't talk about it. They had no idea what was going on with me. So I was kind of this mystery, and they would just send me home, and there'd be no follow-up, no like check out this endocrinologist, try this food, like nothing. So I was very much alone with this. I was bullied, I was sexually assaulted. I got into this place where I just hated, like talk about shame, hated my body so much because it felt like it was betraying me. I couldn't understand what it was going to do next. I didn't trust it. So I was like walking around with this threat of my own body all the time. And that led to extreme sex dysphoria and gender dysphoria and depression and suicidal ideology and everything. And then when I was around 23, I fell in love with my now wife. And I had the shame, interestingly enough, propelled me to get top surgery because I couldn't even make love to her with a shirt off because I was so ashamed of my breasts. I never had gotten comfortable with them. So I got surgery, got them removed, and that kind of started this next it's been like 14, 15 years since then. This next path of like invoking the masculine and feeling what it's like to be a man and being seen as a man and living as a man, which I am, but I never identified as one for a long time because of my biology.
That is so intense. And I just thought we are so lucky, or the new generation is so lucky that they can just go to a doctor and the doctor will say, yeah, we've seen cases like that. All fine, all
There's
normal,
so
all
much more
good.
awareness now. Yes, so much.
Yes.
I feel the same way. I'm really grateful for the new generation having that.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so grateful for people like you who turned their challenging experience into gold right now and who help others. So, like, yeah, thank you for that. And I would love to explore gender roles with you now
Mhm.
because you said that you felt like a girl for
Mhm.
like 14 years, then you felt like a man. And I'm wondering, and I try to investigate all the time, like, are gender roles actually natural, or how much is natural,
Mhm.
how much is a construct? How much is what is actually being feminine, what's being masculine, and like you would be the perfect person to describe this, like what gender roles
Mhm.
are actually authentic and which probably aren't.
Yeah, I love this question because I had a long time to think about it and experience it. Uh, there's a couple pieces for me. So the one piece, I love the terms masculine and feminine so much because they don't connotate to male and female necessarily. They're energies. And for me, masculine and feminine is all about the direction energy moves. It's that simple. Feminine energy is moving inwards, masculine is moving outwards. That's all it means. And it's like a breath in and out. And so when I think of the masculine and the feminine, undoubtedly every human being, regardless of their sex, has masculine and feminine attributes and energies. And you can work with them. You can really develop more of your feminine that goes internal and more of your masculine that goes external. I think everyone should do that. So there's like masculine and feminine, which is an energy, and then there's gender, and then there's sex. So gender is how you express yourself, right? Gender is your expression based on what's been the norm. So if it's a female expression to wear lipstick and high heels, which that has been historically what it's been for most of life, then we would call that more of a female or feminine gender expression. So if I'm a man wearing heels and lipstick, I'm expressing a different gender stereotype or expression. That still doesn't involve my sex. My sex is my biology, right? So think of gender as expression, masculine, feminine as energy, and then your actual body is your biology. That's your sex. And so to me, these are all very different. They all work together, but they're all very different. And I do agree with you, or agree with the question. I do believe some gender roles and some gender expressions are inherently natural because of testosterone and estrogen. And that's the part that I think is super important. It's not about identity for me. It's about there's a literal hormonal biology that completely transforms your body during puberty. And I had both. So I had this really great sense of, wow, and I had a lot of estrogen. I remember what that felt like. I remember those internal feelings. I remember being so incredibly tender, like I could cry so easily at anything. I remember being like very permeable, like my physical boundaries were not very tight. I was like a sponge for everything around me. And then I noticed when I started getting more testosterone, total opposite. I was way less permeable. I felt like, wow, I can actually cut things off. And it was harder to cry at certain things. And my energy was pushing me out more than pulling me in. So there's this thing that hormones do to the body, they're catalysts, where they change these expressions and they do propel some of these behaviors that then become gender roles and stereotypes, right? So
Yeah.
it all kind of exists in that for me.
Yeah, wow. When I was little, I loved to wear the high heels of my grandma. I loved dressing up. I loved a bunch of stuff that people would put in a box and say that's a stereotype. And I'm not sure, is it a stereotype or was it something that was like actually feminine? Because if I think back to like, was it the 1700s or so? But we had kings in France who would wear high heels.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
but the first people to ever wear high heels or heels were men, not high heels, but let's say heels or
Hmm.
makeup was also something that men would use before women or
Hmm.
war paint or whatever. So you can
Hmm.
kind of navigate within these subjects, and it's not inherently feminine. Yet, when I say, "Oh, when I was little, I liked high heels," and there are some boys who, when they are little, they prefer the little car toys over the Barbie dolls. Is it a stereotype? Is it like random, or is
Hmm.
there something to it?
Well, that's what's interesting about the hormones again, because when I think of like more feminine boy, a more feminine boy might have a hormonal shift. He might have more estrogen, less testosterone than like a boy that's very masculine. So if it's a hormonal thing, or even if it's not, let's say it's an energy thing, if you're a more feminine boy, there's something a little more internal. So for me growing up, I was a very feminine boy. I loved playing with dolls. Like I loved it. It felt I just like lit up when I could play with dolls with my friends that were girls. The idea of like racing a car or making like vroom vroom sounds or anything that was really big was it just completely overwhelming to my body because I was in a much more feminine expression. I was in a more yin internalized place. And that doesn't mean less powerful, by the way. It's a different kind of power. It's just a different direction of energy. And so I think what's important for me with this question is historically, biologically, women are biologically designed to caretake children. Like they create the breast milk, they give birth, they have this undeniable attachment to the child until the child's independent. In a way, the man just doesn't. Biologically speaking, it's different now. We have different roles. But you look historically, that's how it's always worked, just because of our bodies. So it makes sense that there would be toys developed for girls to play with raising kids because that's ancestrally what the female lineage did. And it would make sense that boys want to like play with hatchets and fake guns because ancestrally they're the ones that went to war to protect the women and children. So there is this, I think, sacredness around the biology of these gender expressions. And sometimes I do think certain societies and companies can manipulate them to make
Yeah.
people stuck in one too. So I think both are allowed to exist. Like, yeah, wearing heels and wanting to like pretend to nurse a baby when you're 4, that could be a really beautiful natural expression of the feminine and shouldn't be shut down. And if you're living in a house or a society that says that's all you're allowed to be, that's a whole other story, right? It's like both can exist and both can
Yeah.
be an issue.
Yeah, yeah, makes total sense. Do you think that if people control the narrative and if our roles are shaped into one specific direction, that it can affect our biology over time?
That's a good question. That's a good question because there are a lot of studies that show that environment can change hormones. So the way that the kind of person you're raised around, the fragrances in the house, even the diet, so many of those things can change hormones, which then would affect biology. I have actually, it's interesting, a couple clients are coming to mind way long ago, like a decade ago. There were these certain specific kind of women I was really attracting in my therapy practice that were coming to learn how to support their adrenals. They were kind of in adrenal fatigue because they were so exhausted from overworking. And all these women also had husbands. And the kind of through line was the woman was the bread maker and the husband wasn't. That's what all these couples I'm thinking of in my mind were. And a few of the women got their hormones tested and they were raging in testosterone and really low in estrogen. And nothing had changed, like in terms of they weren't on hormones, they had no history of this, but going into a much more masculine role in their relationship and like earning money and going out and working really hard actually increased their estrogen, their testosterone, and they were feeling more masculine. And I remember watching these women go back to getting more estrogen naturally through diet and shifting how much they worked and resting more. And it completely changed their biology. We're talking in a matter of like 6 months to a year. So
Wow.
I think you're spot on. I think gender roles, or especially masculine, feminine, what the one you're working with more, absolutely can have an impact on your hormones and your biology.
Yeah, but now the question is what is right, because now there are
Right.
people
Right.
on the internet, like big debaters, especially many of them on the right, who try to feed a certain narrative that says women have to do just these female things and have to be at home mom, stay-at-home moms and all that. And of course, by that logic, if you put a woman who was more into making money, more into her career, if you put her into this environment, she will probably change. But the question is it better or worse? So this is something that I'm struggling with a lot because even if we change, is it for our better or worse? And I'm not sure about that because these
Yes.
people claim to know the answer. I don't know the answer. I kind of think people should figure that out for themselves and navigate through their life. And if they feel like their relationships are off, that they are not happy, they can consult a coach like you, for example, and
Mhm.
find out if that's their natural state or if probably their nutrition is off and their lifestyle doesn't match their authentic self. But I think it's such an individual thing, and I'm not sure if these I'd say if this kind of advice that generalizes things and that puts all people into the same box, if it really helps anyone.
It's the generalizing, because I think if we look at both sides to play devil's advocate through the lens of generalizing, they're both problematic. So if there's the feminist narrative of women should go to work and they should liberate themselves from the home, that's a generalized narrative. I don't think all women should because it's not in their nature. Some it is, some it's not. Some are lit up by not raising kids and having a job. Others are lit up by being at home and never having a job. Same with the other side of the narrative. Like women should only stay home. Women shouldn't be in society. Some women, if they choose, and other women if they don't. So to me, it's this kind of the generalizing is precisely where I'm at as well with it, which is how does it work for the individual? And what's interesting, and if you kind of look around the world at different studies of happiness, the women that have the most happiness are the ones that have the most support for the first couple years of childbearing. So the ones that have to go to work once they've gave birth to a child, they tend to have the most anxiety because their body's being pulled in two directions. Their biology, their ancient biology is saying tend to this child, like they're wired to do that animalistically, and their let's say their decision making, their desire, their freedom in this modern world is saying go out into the world and make a career for yourself. So it's like these two things happening at once are really overwhelming. But when a woman's career is held for her, like there's certain countries that have incredible maternity leave, like 2, 3 years maternity leave, there's this absolute settling of I can really dive into being a mother for a couple years and I can go right back to work. Or they have enough support from the family or their partner where they're allowed to do both. They can tend and they can also go out. This kind of fluidity seems to make people really happy and alive, but being kind of stuck in one or the other for whatever reason, it doesn't really seem to achieve that.
Yeah, to me, it comes down to the freedom of choice. So if you're free to
Correct.
choose and you have the support network that supports you no matter what, and even if you choose the wrong thing, you can choose another thing in the next moment. You can just
That's
navigate
right.
yourself through that because we always, yeah, we kind of pretend that if we make a choice, it's irreversible or we cannot do anything else, then we are stuck with this choice forever and we have to, like,
Yes.
move along
Yes.
with it.
You learn by making the wrong choices. I was so moved by working. I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs at a certain period because I had a business coach that was referring me out. So I had lots of business owners I was working with. And there were these women business owners I worked with, and a lot of them were also trying to get fertile at the same time. So I was working on two things with them, getting their hormones in balance so they could achieve fertility to have a baby, and also helping them navigate their career. And what was really fascinating again was the women that were really career driven had lower estrogen, so they weren't able to get a fertile egg. When they would start to slow down and heal their adrenals and they were able to get fertile, some of them had their child and like integrated the child into their business and thrived. Others had the child and had complete disinterest in their business, what they loved for 15 years. It was like the gold in their life, but this child surpassed it. So there were differences across the board,
Mhm.
and you didn't really know until you did it and you felt in with yourself. What does this body want to do? So I don't like generalizations for that reason. I think it's
Yeah.
really nuanced.
Yeah, that's incredible how smart the body is. It's just really
Hmm.
incredible. I'm also thinking a lot about women who are actually super feminine in the classic traditional sense, but who are terrified of getting children, who probably don't want to have kids, although their lifestyle would be extremely like feminine and they would be super soft and sensitive and
Hmm.
all that. And I'm asking myself if this is probably the body jumping in saying, that's not for you. We don't have the perfect setup.
Hmm.
Maybe something bad will happen if you get kids, maybe something like that. I don't want to terrify anyone who's watching this episode, but I'm just asking myself if the body is probably smarter than we
Yes.
think.
I think you're spot on. It's like your body's desire for the cucumbers. I
Mhm.
think it's this similar thing of even though you can feel like you love being feminine, you love being a woman, your body can still say no to this thing that is stereotypically like the ultra feminine thing, which is to become a mother, for instance. Your body might have a really good reason for saying no. What's also fascinating, there's a lot of research now behind this, birth control. It shifts your hormones so much that it actually lowers your body's ability to assess a good partner or not. So when you're not on birth control, there's this real sensitivity women have to their partners, and they can I mean, down to the smell of the partner. And the animal body is like, nope, you're not good enough for me to have a baby with you. But when there's birth control involved, they can actually not have that signal, and they can choose someone they wouldn't choose when the birth control, was. So it's fascinating again how much hormones dictate the intelligence of the body. And that's why my work is so about the body because we have all these ideas of who we should be or what we want or we think we want. The body is constantly telling you the truth, how you actually feel about something, what you're actually wanting.
Yeah, and the body is super hyper intelligent. It influences how you think and how you feel and basically everything. And we are trashing it 24/7 with food that isn't made for us. That's incredible. And we are shamed for it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that was another thing because we were at the Pride Parade and there were some naked guys jumping around, maybe like one or two. And my husband asked me, like, so why do you think they're naked? And I was like looking at them and I was like, I think it's liberation. I could be wrong, but it feels like if you always feel that something's wrong with you and that you're kind of suppressed or like you just don't feel free in your body, and now you have this support system through the parade. So just a bunch of people coming together, maybe thousands of people coming together who feel similar to you. You probably do it as a truth or dare a little bit. You like liberate yourself and you just see that even if you do it, you're still there. So that was my guess because I thought there are many people who criticize the parades. There are many people who criticize this very thing happening because they objectify people. But if you're actually there and you just look at the people, there's like nothing to objectify. It's just like, yeah, some random naked dude somewhere. They just want to prove to themselves that even if they're judged, if even if people look at them, even if someone, yeah, judges them, that they are still there after it.
I think it's important to understand the history of the gay and queer experience, and there's two parts to this for me again, to not generalize. There's a history of, I mean, very recently, we're just talking a couple decades ago, where it was in a lot of states like illegal to be gay. You couldn't even have a boyfriend. I have a good friend who was in a urinal in the 80s and looked at someone in the urinal next to him, and it was an undercover cop. They used to trap gays in bathrooms and then throw them in the jail if they looked at them and said that they were going to commit a sex act. So there's this history of extreme trauma and shame around sexual preference that I think in times of liberation, people feel the need to go to the other extreme, which is like, I'm going to bear it all out. And I get it. I think there's this piece of, like you said, freedom of I'll still exist. It's safe to like even show my whole body. And I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing. I do think there's a lot of sexual trauma. And I know this from my own queer experience growing up. There's a lot of sexual trauma when you grow up queer and you don't have a place to put that. And you find people who prey on that shame and who take advantage of your body and take advantage of your sexuality, especially when they know you have something you're hiding and they can use it against you.
Uh-huh.
And I had that happen to me, throughout middle school a lot with other boys. So that also can create like a hypersexualization that's coming from a sexual trauma place. And so I'm always holding both. Like I used to go to this amazing camp in Vermont, and it was a clothing optional camp, and we'd all be on the lake naked together,
Mhm.
and it was so not sexual, it so was not inappropriate. It was like this beautiful liberation of, oh my gosh, we're all together, this is great. And then I would go to places where people were sexually explicit or showing off their body from a trauma place. So
Mhm.
I think it's different for everybody what it's going to be in each situation.
Yeah, I'm European, and I grew up in Germany, and I went to few, I think, naked beaches even when I was little, but
Yeah.
not on, it wasn't even on purpose. My parents had a friend and he was extremely into nutrition and health and all that stuff. And he would go there to get sun everywhere. Like, he was a bit woo-woo and everything. And nobody cared. It's like,
Hmm, hmm,
it's
hmm,
like really
hmm.
nobody cared. There would be like some old people, some not so old people. They would just hang out there. It was just so much, so not interesting or irrelevant. And I think that people, they demonize it, but they also create this big, huge mystery around it. It's basically like objectifying. So they are creating this narrative around the body so much, although
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, there was literally nothing to it. In Germany, we also have these sauna places where you just
Hmm.
go and people are, yeah, you are basically people will look at you as if you're strange if you have the towel. So
Yes, yes. I think it's
it's
so good for people to be naked around each other in non-sexual ways. I think it's like the most healing thing for body shame and body objectification, for sure.
where would you say that shame sits in the body? Where do we feel it?
Oh my gosh, I mean, again, I think that's for each person. For
Yeah,
me, it's my solar plexus is where I feel shame. It's like
yeah,
a fist that pulls me in. Where
yeah.
do you feel it?
Yeah, same. I would say
Same.
the same. Yeah, solar plexus. And I also tried earlier this day. I tried to define this feeling of shame like we did it with joy or comfort. So
Hmm.
I tried to define what shame feels like. And it's actually quite difficult because I try to make it like a little game, like the Inside Out movie, if you know it, with the
I
emotions. And
haven't
they,
seen it, but I know of it. Yeah.
yeah, they all
Everyone's
have
like, you have to
characters.
see this, Luis. I just haven't seen
Yeah, it's brilliant. And they have embarrassment as a character, but they don't have
it.
shame, which
Mm.
for me would go deeper. It's like,
Yeah.
it's deeper than embarrassment. Embarrassment is like a one-time thing, and shame is something internalized. So I was thinking, well, how would you define shame?
Mm. For me, when I feel into it, it's really the state of not wanting to be seen.
Hmm.
Like it's literally I don't want you to even see I'm here. And that's what's so fascinating about it because the isolation itself preserves the shame. So it's this strange pattern of getting stuck where the body, I don't want you to see me. By not being seen, I preserve this pain, but reaching out and being seen is the only way to let go of it. So it's this kind of catch-22 where you're stuck in the pattern and it goes against what you actually need to transform out of it. But for me, it's really that simple. It's I don't want to be seen. I don't want you to see me.
Yeah, maybe it's the same for me. I'll have to investigate. Maybe the listeners
Yeah.
can do the same, investigate what a shame feels like. I think from a huge part for me is I don't want to feel seen, but it's also, it's like the opposite of pride, actually. It's the opposite of
Yes.
expansiousness and being proud of myself.
It is. It is. And that's what I'm saying. So if someone says, I have shame because of my nose, let's say, that's like what they're saying. Because I used to have shame in my nose. So it's not about the nose. It's I have shame, meaning I have this thing where I don't want you to see my nose. So that for me, that's why I keep saying it's about not wanting to be seen. Pride is the total opposite. Pride is literally my chest expands and I take a breath and I want you to see what I'm holding. I want you to see who I am. I want you to see what I believe in. I have pride in this statement, in this whatever it is. And I think that's a whole different physiology of I'm showing it to you versus I'm kind of hiding it from you, keeping it from you.
Yeah, and I find it so disturbing when I think it was Jordan Peterson said on the podcast that pride is one of the seven deadly sins.
Yeah, it is for some religious people for sure.
Yeah, but I think that it's a language gap here,
Mm.
or something, because in Germany you have different words for the for this word. Like there is pride in a negative sense, there is pride in a more positive sense, and in English I think we only have pride, pride, and it's kind of both. And that's a problem actually, because if I wanted people to feel like they are unworthy, and if I wanted people to feel small, then I would say pride is a deadly sin. But
Mhm, mhm,
it's
mhm,
it's actually not, because if you don't feel proud of yourself, then you get into this loop where you are ashamed of yourself, because that's on
mhm.
the flip side, and then you will shame others, and isn't that way more sinful?
I do think people confuse pride with narcissism,
Yeah.
where because they can definitely feed off each other. But I think if you're proud in this way of like I am so proud at how I parented today, that doesn't mean at the expense of everybody else. It means I'm feeling really good about my decisions to parent today. And that goodness is this, for me, is this amazing self-love that then deeply nurtures more of my relationships.
Hmm.
But if I'm using pride as a way to feel better than somebody else, that's when it goes into more of a narcissistic pattern. And I think that, like, I love how you say there's only this one word we have for it. I think you're right. I think the one form of pride can go in either direction. It can be I fill myself up with this and I nurture my connections, or I fill myself up with this to be better than other people and kind of withdraw from people. It's like how am I using it essentially?
Yeah, exactly. Because just imagine you are starting your first job and you're doing well, or you accomplish something great. What are you supposed to do? Beat yourself up? Of course, you should be
Correct,
proud of
correct.
yourself.
That's yeah, I think being proud of yourself is excellent. I love it. You're just noticing, are you using it against others or are you using it for yourself? That's
Yeah.
really the piece, right?
And are you using it for yourself and others ultimately,
Mhm.
because it's like all connected? Okay, that's a controversial take. Would people probably have less plastic surgery and also less surgery when they change their sex
Yeah.
if they were more proud of themselves for who they are?
I love that you're asking this because this is the thing that this kind of correlates to why people call me transphobic sometimes, because of these different opinions. I think they're important. Um, what what's really interesting to me, and this is a very controversial take, transsexualism is new. People say something like trans people have always existed. Spiritual people always existed. So you hear about like different indigenous groups have these kind of third gender, two spirits, these different kind of terms for people who consciously played with gender expression and the masculine feminine. But they weren't changing their physical bodies. It was a whole different thing. And what's happened because of medical intervention and medical technology increasing and being better is people can actually change their physical bodies now. So transsexualism is when you're changing your body to appear as the opposite sex from what you were born into. That's fairly new in this century compared to like our human evolution around gender and such. And I don't think it's right or wrong necessarily, but I do agree with you. Where I get into controversy within the queer community is I see a massive difference between gender and sex. So in the last 15 years, the word transgender has eclipsed the word transsexual, and they're two very important words because transgender has nothing to do with surgery and medicine. Transgender is I transcend gender norms. It's a gender fluid person, it's a gender non-conforming person. So it's a man that wants to wear dresses or lipstick. It's a woman that wants to wear like a man's outfit or take a job that a man would normally take. Like women and men have been doing that forever. And I think it's really great to do that. I've done it my whole life. Transsexualism, being a transsexual, very different thing. It's someone that their gender doesn't bother them, their sex bothers them. So it's not that they have to wear a dress. That will bother someone that's dysphoric, but it's their actual genitals, it's their actual breasts, it's their actual facial hair that creates their distress. So they are to treat that as an adult, they have to undergo multiple surgeries and a lifetime of hormones to physically transition the body. I think it's really important these two things are separated because when you raise a whole generation calling them transgender, but it's actually meaning transsexual, people are getting confused about what they're supposed to do to not conform. And I've worked with a bunch of kids and adults who realized they're gender nonconforming, but thought that meant they had to go through surgery and they actually liked their breasts. They had never had an issue with their breasts their whole life. They just didn't want to dress like a woman, for example.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of nuance within the gender and the sex conversation. And I think it's an important nuance. And people will call me transphobic because they say, you have no right to define us. And I agree. I'm not defining anyone. You can define yourself, but the terms changed and they didn't change for me, but they changed for a certain sect of like the queer community and a certain sect of gender ideology theorists. It went from transsexual to transgender. And so I have transsexual friends that know this and they get frustrated by it because people don't understand them because they've been so conflated with non-binary, gender fluid, and they're two different things. And so what I try to teach people just for the sake of this conversation, like this conversation really illuminates why I care about this so much because I grew up with such pain in my body. Like I know what it's like to be dysphoric. I know what it's like to feel like you're born in the wrong body, to have things happening that betray you. And just like you said, if I didn't have the shame of my body I had, I wouldn't have had top surgery. My body was completely fine. There was nothing wrong with it. But my shame made me want to change how I looked so I could appear more like a man in this world that had like a really defined way of what a man looks like. So all that to say, I think it's really important to help someone really get to know their body before they make an irreversible change. And that's really the main difference that's happened in the last decade with in America and in some other countries, how we help kids who are dysphoric. We title them as trans, which infers they must transition, instead of titling them as dysphoric, you see. Because if you say a child is dysphoric, you're not calling them trans. You're saying something about their body makes them uncomfortable. It could be sexual trauma. It could be weight gain. It could be puberty issues. It could be a divorce in the family. Or it could be sex dysphoria. But that's one reason out of like 20. Does that make sense?
Yes, a lot because it doesn't label them and doesn't already
That's right.
mold them into their next decision. So they are still free to choose and they still can choose whatever they want later, but they don't
That's
already
right.
feed into this narrative that this is the only possible outcome of what they are in right now or what
And
they're going through.
that's exactly what we were talking about generalizations. It to me, it's just as conforming, even in the name of not conforming. It's just as conforming if I have a little boy that wants to wear a dress to assume he needs to be a girl. That's a whole that erases a gay boy, perhaps. Like who knows what his life's going to be like? The dress is one step. So I wouldn't call that 3-year-old a trans kid ever. I would say he's a boy who loves wearing dresses, and that's where we would start. And then we go to see where that takes you. I don't think he should be told not to wear a dress, but it's about where is this developing in him? What is he learning about himself, his femininity, his body? There's so much to explore.
Yeah, maybe it's something entirely different that we don't even know about yet. But if we give it a
Correct.
name, if we label it so early on, then he will believe that. And why would he? Like, why do we need to believe what others think is true if there is
Yeah.
some completely different possible outcome of all that?
Yeah.
Like,
And that's what really interests me is where is it going to go? What can we learn from this child?
yeah, maybe there is so much more going on. Maybe he will be like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but in a dress. Like, you
That's
don't know.
It's true. I met a lot. I met a lot of them, and I think for me, I feel a sense of advocacy for myself when I talk about these things. Because if it was this era when I was growing up, I could have been given hormones at age 10 to be more female and not go into a male puberty. Because I was really identified as female and I had breasts, I had hips, I had estrogen. And I'm really glad that didn't happen because my path was supposed to be like this. It was supposed to be kind of painful and uncomfortable and riddled with shame so I could get out of it eventually and then help people and love myself. So yes, I think when you say shame and plastic surgery, it relates to all that for me. If you're doing it out of shame, versus doing it because I love myself now and I want to like transition and change my body. They're two different things.
Yeah. Like, do you even think that we can be born in the wrong body?
I don't. I think what's really interesting that we don't consider with transsexualism is there's never anything wrong with the body. So every kind of medical, and same thing with plastic surgery, any kind of medical intervention is usually because something's not working. Like, you have neuropathy and your leg is rotting and they remove it. Or you have a deviated septum, you can't breathe, so they fix your nose. Like there's a purpose for it. When we talk about plastic surgery, we talk about sex reassignment surgery, it's the desire of the person who has a very healthy body already, but they're in a relationship with their body that's painful. So the body is doing nothing wrong, but it's the individual's relationship to the body where there's like a rupture and there's stress. And again, I know that so deeply from my experience
Mhm.
of my body now, because I was intersex, my body is, I mean, I am intersex, but I had the intersex development growing up. My body did have a lot of illness because of the competing hormones. So if I would have had some kind of help early on with food and possibly even some hormone intervention, I don't know, but food, it could have really balanced out for me. But most people who are dysphoric, they have really healthy bodies. There's no chronic illness because of the dysphoria. In fact, it's the long-term treatment to transition that creates more health complications.
Mhm.
And I have my dearest friends are transsexuals, and they'll be the first to tell you it's a really hard, long road. You have to make sure it's what you really need to feel comfortable. And they'll take all the risks and the weekly injections and everything they have to do because they are that dysphoric. This is how they're able to function and have a beautiful life. So to me, it's like it should be the last step. It shouldn't be one of the first things somebody does because it's a lot you have to go through.
Yeah, yeah. I also know somebody uh, who transformed from male to female, so they had to cut off the genitals, obviously, and he regretted it. And
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
terrible because I don't know him so well, so I just know him.
Mhm.
So I just know that he was uncomfortable, that he didn't feel well in his body, that he didn't feel well in his life and personality and his environment and whatever. And he kind of thought that'd be a good idea. And he also had a psychologist, I think, but they just have like one, two, three, four sessions with you. I don't know how
Mhm.
many sessions he went through, honestly, but it wasn't that deep, I think, because after all, he regretted it. And
Mhm.
what are you doing then? Like, that's
Yeah, it's
terrifying.
powerful. It's very powerful. I had a client maybe 8 or 9 years ago who came to me because she wanted to get her breast removed.
Hmm.
And she said, but I want to do this right. I really want to take my time. We did 3 years of trauma therapy. And then after those 3 years, like the last couple months, this whole kind of blocked out memory arose in her of being molested as a kid and of when she started developing breasts, the men in her family inappropriately touching her and looking at her. So she developed this understandable hatred for her breasts because they were bringing unwanted attention. And as an adult, had this massive dysphoria around her breasts. So she had sex dysphoria with her breasts, but it wasn't because she was trans, it was because she was sexually assaulted and abused. And so if she wouldn't have uncovered that, she would have removed her breasts, but it wouldn't have gotten rid of the pain because it wasn't about her breasts. You see what I mean?
Yes.
And so it takes a lot of time, and that's the most controversial thing to talk about with this topic is time. People want to really quickly, give kids hormone blockers and puberty blockers and get people on cross-sex hormones because they're really trying to reduce suffering, which I completely understand the intention. But suffering sometimes is part of the path to clarity. And what I love to do is let's give them more support. Let's not give them more reasons to dislike themselves and say they should change. Let's give them more support through the suffering. And then when they've had like years of that support, they've fully developed, so their body's healthy and they can transition if they want to, then they're at a place where they've been sitting with us for a while. But when it's urgency and it's immediate, the transition can often happen out of an urgency rather than an actual like true authenticity. And that's my only real criticism is just to take more time.
I love this. I love this. Makes me think about the question, if would you do it? Would you still change your body if you were unconditionally loved and supported by your environment and yourself?
Yes, that's a question. I was talking to a friend the other day who transitioned, and they were saying to me, Sometimes I think I did this just because society said I had to look this certain way. I wasn't around, I wasn't in an environment that was just letting me be this strange kind of girl.
Hmm.
I had to become this other, something more masculine, something more to a man, because we had these, back to the original question, we had these fixed stereotypes of what a man or a woman is. And I think gender fluidity is the best thing that could happen to the world because we still have our sex intact. We're still a man or a woman, but we're able to be whatever we want to be as a man or a woman. So there isn't the pressure to convert yourself. It's just be the kind of man or woman you are. And then I still think there's always going to be the rare birds that are truly transsexuals, that truly need to have that experience. And that's their path in this lifetime. And
Hmm.
one of my dearest friends is a transsexual man. He would change nothing. Like he has been 20 years transition, very happy. My friend's other friend is transsexual woman, 35 years, extremely happy. There's no regrets. So it really, but they all took their time and they all transitioned in their 20s. They weren't in there as children. So it all, it's interesting how you hold it, but for me, it's about how much time are we taking with this? Because it's a really big decision.
Yeah, to find out what is you, because you can also change. What if you feel one way about a situation and you feel totally different about it in 2 or 3 years or months?
That's
Of
right.
course, you don't know, but it becomes more or less likely that
That's right.
things entirely change.
That's right. And those kind of comments that we're talking about, some people would call that transphobic. Some
Hmm.
people would call it trans advocating. So it depends on who you ask. And
Yeah.
so I have trans people that come up to me just out of the blue. They'll see me in public and be like, thank you so much for what you're saying, because more people need to hear it. And I'll have other people who call themselves trans that are completely pissed off with me. So it's again, like no, nothing's a monolith. Just because you're in one group or you're one thing doesn't mean everyone agrees. And that's okay. I think it's beautiful to have like true thought diversity.
Do you have one or two questions that people could ask themselves before jumping into these decisions?
Hmm. One question I would ask is, did this start during puberty or before puberty? Because puberty is one of the most incredible sources of dysphoria. Because your body is suddenly changing, suddenly sexualizing, suddenly getting attention, doing things you don't want it to do. And you can become dysphoric around your sex and dysmorphic around your body just from puberty. Whereas a lot of the transsexuals I know, I mean, it was from 3 or 4 years old. They're like, why do I have a penis? There was never, they never felt comfortable with it. They always were confused about it. So I'd really get curious about, did this start during puberty? That's one thing. And then I would get really curious about, is this for myself or is it for how other people see me? Like if I was in a room alone for the rest of my life, is it me who wants this body to change or do I want people to see me differently? And that's a really big question because if you want to transition for you and you're like I had a friend the other day say to me, this is a trans masculine person, and they were saying they go by they them, but they present as male, and they were saying to me, I love my masculine body. I love it so much. I'm doing this for me. It feels so good. It turns me on. I feel alive in the world. That person's doing it for themselves. So that's very clear versus I'm doing this so other people see me the way I wish they could. So it really depends to me on who is this for? What's your own relationship to your body? And when did this start? When did it begin? Were you born like this or did it develop at some point? That's very important to me.
Yeah, powerful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for asking.
I enjoyed this interview so much and I learned so much from you.
I want to say that this was such a fun interview. I can tell you have such an expansive mind. You can go in all these different directions and even go into things that seemingly contradict themselves. And I love that. It feels so good and centered and balanced and alive. And I thank you. It's refreshing. Yeah, I thank you so much.
The episode will drop within 2 weeks.
I should just add, because it's coming out in 2 weeks, I have a webinar that's all about supporting boys through puberty,
Mhm.
and that's coming on August 9th. So anyone listening to this conversation around gender stereotypes, raising kids, I have one specifically on raising boys through puberty. And so anyone that wants to come and go deeper into the conversation, I'll be hosting that.
Perfect. I will also link your website and all your socials so people know how to reach you, how to book a coaching. I think you're an incredible coach.
Thank you, my friend. Really beautiful work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, friend. Have a great and beautiful day. Bye.